Hello, everyone. It's Mrs. Wallace. I just wanted to do a couple of things to help you with the upcoming projects. One is that we get a lot of questions often about citing in MLA. We use the ninth edition in case you have questions about that. And these projects are really good practice for just citing materials and getting a sense of how to cite materials. So, worthwhile to kind of go through this. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples so that you could have some of your questions answered. Generally, the citing guidelines for MLA include the following pieces of information. Sometimes you have each one of these and sometimes you don't. There are a lot of ways that you can use Google, Google Docs. You can also use other types of, formatting help or, bibliography creators. You can go online and do that. A lot of sources also come with the information attached to it. So today, it's a little bit easier to access some of the citation information in its entirety, but you always want to make sure that you're using MLA. You should always consider the author of the source first. That's most important information. Then title of the source and the title of the container. The container is essentially where you found the source. So if you get a source, even if it's a primary source on a website, the primary source might have an author and a title, but the title of the container is also very important. Other contributors, so you might have a work, for example, that has multiple editors or multiple authors, a version, a number, if it's a journal article, for example, publisher, publication date, and location. And of course, a lot of the materials you are accessing nowadays include the digital materials, and there's some debate about whether or not URLs have to be included. Sometimes they expire and they go out of date, and so it can be a frustrating part of a citation. So that's where there's some debate. I think the most recent version of MLA, you do not need to include the date that you access something, and URLs are generally included, but sometimes it's recommended that they're not. So a couple of just examples just for basic citing things, and these are just examples, and I put the choices one in red so you can kind of use that example most. But anytime you're using a book, so say that you got a book, you'd have the author last name first, and when you do your work cited at the end of your paper, for example, or at the end of a slideshow, if you were submitting a PowerPoint, you would have this alphabetized. So Henley would go, after some author that last name starts with an A or B or whichever. You can see with the book that the book title goes in italics. McMurray is the publisher, and the date of publication is also attached. And that's really all the information for a book, which is probably like the easiest type of thing to cite. A lot of you are citing information that you get from a website. So you have like a parent website, and then you might also have an author. Okay, so the author in some cases might be an individual. So Lundman Susan. The article is How to Make Vegetarian Chili. So that's like the title of what this article Susan Lundman wrote. The name of the website is eHow, and then the URL is there. Okay, and again, you may or may not include the date that you access this. It's no longer mandatory in MLA citation. I put the choices one in red because it's a little bit unique. First of all, it is not a, it's not a, we don't have an author. We don't have a Susan Lundman. So because it's really an institution that's authored this, there's a group of people at Brown University who put this together. And you're not really citing Brown University. You're not really citing, you're citing the Choices program, but you're noting a few key pieces about it. The first thing that comes up is the Haitian Revolution. And in this case, because I was looking specifically at the introduction, I put in here introduction. If you were looking at the independence movement part, you could note to your reader that that's the part of the Haitian Revolution source that you were looking at. So this part, right here in the middle, this introduction kind of adds a little bit more specific detail. But you have as the author, the Haitian Revolution dash the Choices program, okay? And then that's in quotes because that's essentially the title of the source. The author is not noted in the beginning because we don't have a specific author, but we do have a website. The container is choices.edu, and that goes in italics, and choices is capitalized. We get the year 2025. That's the year that this unit was created by Choices. And then we also have Choices website URL, and the date it was accessed. Okay, so it happens to be today, February 22nd. I accessed this today to put this on this slideshow. Okay, if you were doing some JSTOR research and you found a journal article, you might include, and JSTOR, by the way, includes their citations, and there is a point at the end where they do let you know that, that it comes from a JSTOR database. So, that might be a little bit more specific, but say that you got a periodical. Generally, you would have your authors, the title of the essay or the journal article, and then the name of the journal. Okay, so in the first citation here, the Tulsa Studies in Women's Literature had published this author's article, Alanknanda Bagchi, and then she wrote, conflicting nationalisms, blah, 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 blah. We get a lot of information about the volume and the number of the journal that this is in because it's a one that comes out consistently. Note we also have the page numbers because there is, in this case, the need to put specific page numbers. The very last one is an example of a newspaper journal, a newspaper article. So Sarah Schmidt is the author. In this case, we have an individual who's an author. Companies failed the test, junk food marketing aimed at kids faulted, published in the New York Times, and the date and the page number. Usually that is noted if it is in a particular area of the newspaper. Sometimes we don't see page numbers noted if it's like a feature story or something like that. That's something that is maybe a little less significant, and there's some rules about that. Whenever we talk about a container, we're talking about what houses the source that you're looking at. So if you're looking at a primary source, or you're looking at a journal article or some other type of newspaper article, you could be actually holding like the print copy of the New York Times, or you could be going to their archived website and you could be using a website, which is the container. Okay, so keep in mind that the title of the container is usually italicized and followed by a comma. The example that we have here is an author by the name of Jamaica Kincaid. So Kincaid, comma, Jamaica, period. Girl is the name of her article or the name of her story or whichever. And then the container where this came from was a book of contemporary American short stories. So maybe something in print, we have an editor, and we have other information. When you have the container, that might be a website. Wise to Wanda, this is our, kind of author and last name first. Why TV Shows Make Me Feel Less Alone is the name of her article. And then NAMI is the website. That's considered the container. Okay, and sometimes you actually have multiple containers. That gets a little more complicated. That's one of the things we see in the choices thing. So let's look at some indirect sourcing. Indirect sourcing is like when you're not able to obtain the original source, you might look at the choices packet, and you might notice that there is, under the Haitian Revolution assignment, there is a source called causes and a source called effects. The causes is a group of different historians who are quoted as having some sort of commentary or data or something like that about the causes of the Haitian Revolution. So if you decide you want to use those, you want to actually quote when you use it or tell your reader that you are noting, historian X, Y, and Z. And in this example, let's say that the person you actually want to quote is Michael Wolff. Okay, so you're noting this particular quote. And so in the discussion that you're having with your reader, when you're actually writing the text of your slideshow, or you're talking in your video clip or your podcast, you might say, as noted by historian Michael Wolff, blah, 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 right? Now you also would tell your reader that's quoted in this case, it's Fleischman, page 64, you might have quoted in choices, okay? And the you can go back to the language that's in here and say, quoted in the Haitian Revolution. And that would be enough. You don't really have to put this whole, the Haitian Revolution, introduction, the choices program. You can just put the Haitian Revolution. You're basically telling your reader, look for this on my works cited page, look for the first three words. Okay, so that's essentially what you could do. And you're, by that quoted in, you're telling your reader, I really want to tell you about Michael Wolff, the historian's, words, but it's quoted in this Haitian Revolution packet. If you want more information about where to get that, go to the works cited list. So then, of course, if you go in this example, quoted in Fleischmann, the indirect source in the works cited list doesn't have Michael Wolff on it. Okay, so this is like really the important takeaway. If you're citing an historian from the choices packet, when you use it, you're going to tell your reader, I am quoting, Michael Wolff. But when you go to do your works cited list, because you didn't get it from the historian directly, you didn't read their book, you don't want to tell your reader that you read their entire work. You're telling your reader, I looked at the choices packet and I lifted, this quote from the choices packet. So you're really citing in your works cited, the Haitian Revolution source that choices did, exactly what we looked at before. Okay, so all of the parentheticals are really just clues to help your reader find the source in your works cited list. Okay, so that's really like the big takeaway about citing. And of course, we know we want to cite because it lends credibility to our work. It also clarifies for our readers, what words are ours and our original thinking and what words maybe came from elsewhere, right? And so that's important in scholarship. This is another example of that same thing. If I wanted to quote, say, an historian with the last name of Joseph, Joseph advises blah, 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 blah. I'm noting all of these things, and it's quoted in this other work, Sorensen and Van Dyke, okay? And then where's the works cited citation at the very end? Sorensen, Annette, Scott Van Dyke, only the first name is, put last name first, the second author is not. So those are things just to keep in mind, okay? Just other little things, when you are using parentheticals to do your in-text citations, the period goes at the end of the parenthetical. The parenthetical is not included in quotes. If something is quoted directly, you can paraphrase, as in this first example, Joseph, who is the person who's being referenced here, and giving credit, is saying something that the author is paraphrasing. In the second example, you have a direct quote, so this would be something that the historian or the author, Joseph, actually said. And we're getting the period at the end, and the quote ends before the parenthetical. So just like little things, okay? The last thing I'm going to note is that sometimes it's really useful that you don't double cite. So if you put in your text, right? Say that you're writing an English paper and you're talking about Wordsworth, and you state something like Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. In this case, you would put the page number at the end. You have Wordsworth, so you don't have to, at the end of the sentence, again put Wordsworth. You already told your reader that, so you're just putting the page number. In the second example, romantic poetry is characterized by, if without a citation, this sounds like this could almost be your words, but because you have quotes here, your reader's going to be like, well, who are you quoting? So you're telling your reader, I am quoting Wordsworth, page 263. So you're either putting it in the beginning of the sentence and telling your reader up front, Wordsworth said this, or you're telling your reader at the end, okay? So, either one of those is essentially fine. What you would look at for this, if you go to the works cited list at the end, Wordsworth William, Lyrical Ballads, that's the book that this came from, and so on, okay? I hope that that's a little helpful. I will see you in class. Keep asking your questions.